Dr. Chapman, we are back again, and I want to say thank you so much for joining us and for always sharing your knowledge with us, because without knowledge, I believe people do perish. And I am more than grateful to, say to you from my heart that I appreciate you, because I know that what you do for a living. And I know that you have a passion for the people that you serve. And I know that it's not just, about the almighty dollar bill for you. Although I know a workman is worthy of his hire. I mean, I get that. You are worth every dime that you charge.
Thank you.
But at the same time, I just want to say thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's kind.
So what we're talking about today is the difference between fear, anxiety, panic, and panic attacks. And Dr. Chapman, that sounds so much to people, but can you help us really understand it in layman's terms so that we can start to get a better hold on what's happening to us?
Most certainly. Those are, you know this, Mona Lisa, but those are my favorite things to talk about in many ways from a mental health perspective, because most people think those three things are the same, right? Fear, anxiety, and panic are not the same concept. So I guess I'll start from a very basic standpoint to explain the differences. Well, I think the easiest example would be, first and foremost, fear is a normal reaction to current threat or danger. Your body is hardwired to respond to threat with what we call fight or flight. A lot of people get that confused with anxiety. Anxiety is not fight or flight. I repeat, anxiety is not fight or flight. Fear, on the other hand, is fight or flight. Fear, your body is rushed with adrenaline. You have a fast beating heart. You have shortness of breath. You can have dizziness and lightheadedness. You can have stomach distress, body tension. But here's the thing, Mona Lisa, fear at its core is meant to help you respond to current danger. Mm-hmm. So you are under attack. You are being chased. You are in a potential life or death situation. That's fear's purpose. Now, I want to make that crystal clear, because fear is supposed to help us. Panic, on the other hand, is literally the same clinical experience as fear is. The difference, though, is that panic is what we call a false alarm. If you go to a movie theater and you pull the fire alarm, the fire trucks still show up, right?
Right.
But there's no fire. Yet the fire trucks still show up. Now, essentially what I'm saying is that if you have a panic attack, you're having the fear response when there's no present danger. The difference, though, is that people who are having the fear response are paying attention to what? They're paying attention to the actual threat.
Right.
Right? So they're having the same symptoms, Mona Lisa, as the panic person is. Mm-hmm. They're just not paying attention to their body. They're paying attention to life or death. Panic, on the other hand, since there's no danger or threat, where are they paying attention? They're paying attention to their own bodily sensations, which makes it worse, right? So in other words, panic is what we call the fear of fear. The fear of having the fear response. Fear is a hardwired, normal reaction to present danger or threat. Now, anxiety, the difference with anxiety and these other constructs is that anxiety is what we call preparatory coping. In other words, I'm preparing for the potential of threat. Think about it. If I'm anxious about something, I tend to say things to myself like, what if this happens? What if I fail the test? What if my daughter goes to jail in this case, right? What if I'm not able to help them? Your body is then preparing itself for the potential of danger. Notice it's not occurring. It's the possibility that it might. So in other words, one way to think about panic is that anxiety always primes the pump for panic, because you're preparing yourself to look out and be on the lookout for possible danger. So if that danger happens, then boom, your body's already prepared itself to fight or flight.
Wow. That's deep right there. That says a lot, because most people get completely confused from the three, and they walk around quick to say, I'm having a panic attack. I'm having a panic attack. And like, let's say, for instance, your heart starts to race, like you just said, and you start feeling like lightheaded. You're saying that's more of anxiety, or is that a definite panic attack?
Well, that's a good question, because there's a lot of symptom overlap there. I guess the best way to construe that Mona Lisa, is that anxiety is less intense in that way than panic is. Your heart's racing when you're anxious too. You have shortness of breath when you're anxious too. You're really vigilant and alert when you're anxious too, but it's not as intense as panic, because panic, like adrenaline, floods your body, and it's way more intense than that because all the blood and oxygen go to your core, which is somewhat of a different discussion. But I guess one thing I'd say to that is the irony in everything you and I are talking about right now is that all of those sensations that you just mentioned, they're all completely normal and they're all completely harmless, which is how you help someone treat it, is to get them to recognize that those sensations are actually appropriate if you're in danger. But the key to getting rid of panic is teaching someone to confront those sensations by making them have them, but also teaching them to interpret those sensations as harmless and non-threatening.
Wow. And how could you possibly do that? Like, for instance, if your child is in prison and you're saying to yourself, I have no control at all over what is happening to he or she every single day. And I get calls that tell me that they just got into a fight, or they just got, severely mistreated by a guard, or their human rights have been violated. How do you deal with that feeling of helplessness and then the anxiety that comes behind it, or panic, whatever it might be at that point?
Well, I think there's a number of different ways to approach that in Mona Lisa, and there's not a set formula per se, but I guess based on that question, I guess the way I would construe that would be thinking about, first and foremost, something I've mentioned in the past, that we have to learn to be non-judgmental about our emotional experiences, because like happiness or surprise or even disgust or even sadness, anxiety can actually be a very helpful emotional experience if it's trying to tell you something about the possibility of threat. Case in point, real quick, and I'll get to your question, is if I have a test that's coming up and anxiety is saying, you might want to study for this because you need to avoid failing, then the appropriate response to that anxiety is to study and not procrastinate. Because because if I procrastinate, I'm relieving myself of the anxiety temporarily, but what happens test day? It backfires and makes me feel way more anxious, right?
Right.
In the same vein, Mona Lisa, if someone has a child that's incarcerated and they get anxious about something that they heard that actually did happen, well, the anxiety is probably related to something that did occur, and it's something trying to convince them that something requires their attention, right? So problem solving would be a good reaction to that anxiety in many ways, because if my daughter or my son is actually incarcerated and there's something I can actually do to help, then that anxiety is probably prompting you to make the appropriate phone call, or to call the right person, or to go to visitation and encourage them. Like, these are the sorts of things, these are just examples, but in that case, that's a very practical regulation attempt at anxiety, is to do those things, right? But if I'm panicking, when in reality I'm not in any sort of danger, and there's no present threat or danger, then again, that intervention is a little different, because that's where I have to learn how to interpret those bodily sensations as non-threatening, that I'm not going to pass out, that I'm not dying, and that there's nothing wrong with my heart, and learn how to recondition myself to experience those sensations in a normal fashion. So there's kind of a two-pronged approach depending on what's triggering the anxiety and the panic.
So what would I say to myself? What would we say to ourselves when we get to a state that we need to, mentally recondition ourselves? What are some of the things we can say to ourselves?
Well, I think in many ways, the better question would be, what should I ask myself so that I'll know what to say to myself? So in many ways, it depends on what the underlying fear is, right? So if I say, oh, something's wrong with my heart, let's say that's my concern, right? When these sort of things happen, then, well, one question you could ask yourself is, well, what's the evidence that something's wrong with my heart? Well, it's beating really fast. Okay. Does it beating really fast mean something's wrong with it? See, these are all objective questions that you can ask yourself. I call these disputing questions. They're questions that help you step outside of yourself, Mona Lisa, and to look at the features of your symptoms instead of the feelings of your symptoms. Because those questions have a very obvious answer, right? Like, for example, if someone were to say, oh, I'm going to pass out, what's the evidence that you're going to pass out? Oh, well, I just feel lightheaded. Does being lightheaded mean you're going to pass out? No, it's just uncomfortable. Have you passed out in the past? No. Okay, so based on all that evidence that we're talking about, what's another alternative way to view this situation that supports reality in many ways. So learning how to reprogram your thoughts or cognitions, as we often call them, learning how to reprogram those in an evidence-based way will teach you how to view those sensations over time as harmless and non-threatening and just anxiety.
So basically what he's saying, guys, is ask yourself questions when you start going through all of this, and don't overanalyze everything that's coming into your head and give it so much credence. Don't give it so much power over you.
Right.
Kind of really sit back and think about what's happening to you and ask yourself the questions of reality while it's happening, so that you don't allow things to progress into a state that probably isn't even really real. It could be real, but it probably would only happen if you keep allowing it to happen. So it's all about mental reprogramming, and I like that. I like that concept, because I actually have used it myself on many occasions. When I get calls and stuff like that, the first thing that I do is exactly what Dr. Chapman just said. I ask myself, well, is there something I can do about this? When I get this call, is there something or someone I can call? Do I even feel the need to do it? Or am I just creating this urgency to make myself panicky and filled with anxiety when it's not even necessary? There are things that our kids are going to go through. And the reality is that we can't control anything at all. All we can do is do like what he was saying, find a way to maybe get there and encourage them, get to visitation more often. I don't know if you believe in the divine. I do. That would be God in my case. Pray, meditate, different things that you can think about that can help you to kind of recenter yourself. It all starts again in the mind. The mind is a powerful tool. Speaking of the mind, Dr. Chapman, is there a difference between what we think and our subconscious? Can we tell our subconscious what to do, or do we have more control over our minds than we think we do?
That's a great question. We absolutely do. The thing is that you might hear someone say, oh, we can't see what someone's thinking. Oh, we most certainly can see what someone's thinking by what they're doing.
Oh, actions. Ooh.
So in other words, the first and foremost, most important concept, Mona Lisa, that I've mentioned is that all of our emotions have three parts, right? And most people think our emotions have one, and they focus only on the feeling component, right? How I feel in my body. But the answer to your question is straightforward. It's I have thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Those are the three components of any emotional experience I have. And the way you become more aware of that is by when you're in situations and you experience a strong emotion, putting that emotion into those three categories will actually help you start to discern what you're thinking about that's creating that emotional experience. Most people are victims and slaves to what happens, right? That made me angry. That made me feel bad. You made me sad. Technically, Mona Lisa, this is a different conversation, right? But technically, that's impossible. Our interpretation of situations create our emotional experience, not the event itself. That's powerful. And in understanding that concept is the foundation of changing anything we've talked about. You have to first and foremost understand, to your question, absolutely yes, with 10 exclamation points, we have way more control over our mind, and because we can't behave a certain way without thinking about it first. But most people are unaware of what they're thinking, and so the first step, of course, is awareness. I have to know what I'm even saying to myself before I can change anything associated with that. So I have to break that down and understand, I'm angry. Did that dude cutting me off in traffic make me angry? No, he didn't. But my interpretation of him cutting me off in traffic did. So I have to break that down and put that emotion in its three parts. Once I start doing that, then I do what my motto is, Mona Lisa. I'm training myself to be my own psychologist.
Wow. That's going to be powerful. Woo, that's powerful. Because that brain right there, oh my God.
Hey, that's a true statement.
How are you doing that? I mean, thoughts, feelings, emotions, how's that connecting to you training yourself?
Well, if you understand that, again, foundation, right? Like I like to tell people, Mona Lisa, it's appropriate etiquette to set out the tablecloth and the plates and the forks before you eat a meal, right?
Right.
So you first and foremost, before you jump into, how do I change X, Y, and Z, you have to initially understand my emotions, they all have the same three parts. Disgust, that's the same three parts as anger. That's the thing I'm getting at here. So when I first understand that my emotions that happen, are comprised of my thoughts, what I say to myself, my feelings, how I feel in my body, and my behavior, what I do, then I can start becoming less of a victim when I'm in these situations and start being more proactive and understanding that I'm actually creating my emotional experiences based on past experiences, based on how I've learned to think about situations, based on what my mother and whoever else taught me, and based on all these things I've learned over time. I've learned to program myself to think about things kind of automatically, right? We call those automatic thoughts, but ultimately I can change those and reprogram the way I perceive new situations. So then you can start understanding things like, what are the triggers to my emotional experiences? What are the consequences to my emotional experiences? Once you become aware of that, then all the tools start to make sense. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. That's very good. And I can't wait until the day where I can say that I'm doing the same thing for myself. I'm working on it every single day, trying to get a hold of my thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And I remember the first time I met you, that was the very first amount of therapy that you gave me. That was the first thought process you taught me, how to really, understand my environment from thinking first about my thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And I have used that ever since I met you, and it has been so good for me as far as being able to work through things a lot better, to be able to ground myself, to be able to be less anxious, less angry, less worried, less any kind of negative emotion you can connect to. It's done a lot for me, and for those of you guys out there, he's speaking some truth here, and I hope that you're really getting a hold of what he's saying. Understanding first what you're thinking, what you're feeling leads to your emotions. It's amazing to me how once you connect to that, you will start to uncover things that I'm not sure is on a conscious level, but rather on an unconscious level. So he's right. We have a great amount of control over our minds, and it's up to us to start to take that control. If we don't take it back, it's going to be taken from us. It's pretty simple. So go for the control of your own mind by learning to put some of these things into practice. And, Dr. Chapman is always with us again, trying to share his supreme knowledge about the mind and about the things that we need to help us to walk this journey with grace and ease. Parents with incarcerated children, is a constant journey. It probably doesn't end even once they come home, if they do come home. I know some of you guys are out there actually facing life sentences, and some of us are walking through the sentence, and some of us have our children back home and are actually in positions where we have to, re-parent all over again. But I'm encouraging you to stay focused, to keep your head up, and to continuously seek after psychological help, because it is there that you will find your freedom. It is there that you will set yourself in motion and in action towards coming out of this symbolic incarceration that a lot of us have put ourselves in. It is there you will walk away from the avoidance behavior, where you run and hide and stay away from everything and everybody. It's at that point, when you seek the psychological help, that you will find the freedom. So Dr. Chapman, I want to say thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for all that you do for us. We're going to be talking to you again shortly, and we're going to be talking to you a little bit about overcoming the guilt and shame. I know that's a big, deep subject, so I want you guys to get ready for that one. It's going to take us a little while to walk through that one. If you have any questions, start to send them in. If you have comments, share them, and share this video. Don't just waste your time watching it and not sharing it. Watch it, implement it, watch it again, implement it again, watch it again, share it. You will not get this after just watching it one time. Get it in your soul, and then your spirit and your body will follow. So visit our website at www.pwicus.org. That's Parents with Incarcerated Children US.org. PWICUS.org. And Dr. Chapman, is there anywhere that you want them to come visit you?
Well, they can go to my website, drkevinchapman.com. I'm pretty easy to find on Google. or you can go to, drkevinchapman.com will be sufficient. You can find a number of resources there as well, where I talk about some of these concepts as well.
Awesome. So until we meet again, you guys enjoy life, and I'll talk to you again soon. Take care.